Hi, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here in Glasgow and to be part of this active community. So Maja and I are going to present a few findings from our study. It's actually a research project and also Maja's PhD research. So in this study, we were looking at navigation in an online bookstore, and we found some interesting relationships between the metadata and the navigation and how users experience their interaction. So we thought that this was a really nice topic for this year's ISKO conference. So we'll be happy to hear any thoughts you might have on this or continue the discussion. I think it's a good complement to the talks we've had so far. So first, a bit of a broader context of the study that we'll be talking about today. So in this project, we are looking at how we can use eye tracking technology for evaluation and the design of bibliographic information systems. So we are a bit more interested in the methodological part of it. So what data can be collected using eye tracking, and what does this data tell us, and what does it mean about user behavior and information interaction. We are also interested in how to use eye tracking in the evaluation and the design, improving the design of bibliographic information systems. And last but not least, we would really like to see how eye tracking results, findings compare to the results we can get from other methods and how those can be complemented. So that's sort of like the broader context in which this study today was created. In one of our previous studies, so this is sort of the first study in this research project, we actually took eye tracking and user experience questionnaires. We asked people to do some delegated tasks in 2 different digital libraries, and analyzing those results, we found that from combining eye tracking and user experience questionnaires, we found that the intuitiveness of the homepage and particularly the search box really affected people's emotions and perceptions of the system, and especially the perception of the hedonic qualities, which was a bit surprising because we would think that when something is not working, they would say, well, this is a bad system, not that they don't enjoy it, it's not interesting, and so on. So this study actually motivated us to further look into user experience. So how can different user interface elements impact user experience? And of course, we are still interested in exploring how we can use eye tracking in this process. So for the study we'll be presenting today, our aim was to actually look into a different type of search. So the more exploratory search, something we've been talking about today. Also, trying to see how people discover interesting books. So we were interested in how people find a good book and how we can track this with eye tracking. And we also decided to combine this with concurrent Think-Aloud, so as the previous study. And of course, we were interested in many things in the analysis, but one of the things that we are particularly interested in was, how do users navigate an online bookstore and make a selection? And, how do user interface elements in an online bookstore impact user experience? So what influences the experience when they're browsing an online bookstore? So from literature, we know something about, finding and selecting a good book. There has been some, I would say, renewed interest in this topic in the last 10 years. There have been some studies. They have been looking, for example, at metadata that's needed to support searching and selection of novels. We know that finding a good book is quite a complex process because people usually don't have a particular title or author in mind, but they want to explore and, get this serendipitous discovery. We know that online bookstores, library catalogs are not always very good at supporting this type of search. We know that people have different ways of judging what is a good book. We have different types of readers. Some might be looking for a particular genre. Some might be looking at a particular, mood, literary style, and so on. So we know that query-based searching is not really the best in this case, and research tells us that people have a good chance of finding a good book if they examine the metadata closely, if they look at the results closely. So eye tracking has also been used in some studies connected to finding good books in library catalogs. So we would say that eye tracking has a potential in this area because it can track some unconscious behavior, some things that people cannot verbalize. We cannot maybe even notice as observers, like what people were doing. So there is a potential, but so far, I would say that the studies were not really conclusive. Some studies said that people really focused on titles and descriptions, and other studies said that they focused on covers and navigation. And I would say that this is because, there are so different systems. So it's really difficult to get a general conclusion about this. But maybe an interesting finding was that quick judgments, people make quick judgments on uninteresting books. So we are pretty quick to say this is not interesting, and we spend most time when something looks somewhat interesting but not very interesting. This was something that came out of those eye tracking studies. So what we didn't find in literature was what influences the user experience during the exploratory search for novels. So what are the potential connections between emotions and perceptions and the organization of information in an online bookstore? So there was one study that actually found or indicated that there is a relation between content organization, navigation system, and visual organization and users' preference of an online bookstore. So this is sort of an indication that this user experience is also important. So now I'll move over to an overview of the methodology, and then I'll hand over to Maja, who will present the results. So our data collection took place in autumn of 2021. So this was still the COVID period, which was not really good for user studies. So we had to use snowball sampling, so just finding people who were willing to participate. We got 33 volunteers who used the Slovenian online bookstore, and we gave them two sort of open-ended tasks to find a leisure book of their own choice, and to search by analogy. So, you have a friend, he likes this book, what would you find for him as a birthday gift? So we collected various data, screen recordings, we gathered eye tracking data and concurrent Think-Aloud. Not all the data was good for analysis, so we ended up with 31 screen recordings, 26 eye tracking sort of recordings, and 20 concurrent Think-Aloud. In our analysis, we then used screen recordings to create user paths. We used eye tracking to extract gaze metrics such as time to first fixation, how long they fixated on a particular area, and so on. And then the concurrent Think-Aloud we of course transcribed and then analyzed through content analysis. We used open coding in an iterative process. And then combine the codes in 4 main categories. It was the interface features, metadata, user interface, and user tasks. And in the end, we used a tool called Max Maps, in which we could, use or display visual representation of the connections between the codes. So whenever two codes appear together 2 times, more than 5 times, sorry, they would appear in this visualization. So this actually gave us an opportunity to explore potential influences on user experience.
The analysis of user paths revealed that even though the tasks were more exploratory in nature, participants often used queries, and they typically interacted with the search box multiple times, refining or changing the queries because they were dissatisfied with the initial search results. Based on their comments, we learned that the reason behind frequent use of queries was because the categorization of the navigation bar was perceived as strange and inconsistent. For example, in the list, it mixed genres and formats, and in the same list, it mixed authors and literary characters, and so on. Also, an interesting observation is that the time to first fixation on the navigation bar was quite high. Also, other features that would support browsing, such as faceted navigation and recommendation lists, were seen as potentially useful. In fact, participants said that they would like to use it and have spent quite a lot of time looking at those areas. But at the end, these features received limited use. And even when they were used, they rarely led directly to an item selection. Instead, participants further sorted or even performed a new query before making their final selection. These browsing possibilities made it difficult for participants to find what they had in mind, and of course, it also influenced their trust in the system, making them more inclined to use queries, which were seen as more reliable at the time. The eye tracking metrics presented in the article showed that participants spent more time looking at the cover images rather than reading title, author, and price metadata. And in the comments, participants explained that they focused more on the book covers because there was not much other metadata available on this particular result list. They did notice star ratings. They actually would like to use them, or they said they would use them, but in this case did not find them particularly trustworthy. They told us that the star ratings were often missing or based only on a single review. The final choices, the final selection was often made based on the appeal of the book covers or the description of the book. To explore the influences on the user experience, we looked for the co-occurrences between the codes. So in this case, between the codes depicting the user experience and the codes related to the user interface elements, features, or metadata. The most negative emotions or codes occurred when the participants interacted with the result list. They were dissatisfied with the retrieved items, or they found the number of hits displayed on the result list insufficient. They were also confused by the sorting options, and they had quite a few ideas for improvement for the faceted navigation. In fact, we learned that the participant had more experience, their general experience, with more sophisticated systems and therefore more sophisticated user interfaces, which influenced their expectations and impacted their perception of this online bookstore. An important aspect as well was also the unintuitiveness of the information architecture. They found the navigation menu genre confusing, and as a result, useless for the task at hand. Similarly, the item page was perceived as inconsistent and poor quality, and this has a lot to do with the metadata. Participants expressed that they were often distracted by the inconsistency in metadata. For example, some books were described in more length than others, book descriptions were in different languages, the descriptions were positioned on different parts of the item page, and so on. Generally, participants expressed a desire for more extensive book descriptions and also more detailed metadata about publications, which would help them make a selection. Interestingly, we see a lot of negative emotions. However, on the right side, we see that the only frequently appearing positive emotion or perception was related to star rating. As already mentioned, the star ratings are often missing or based on a single review. However, participants said that such function is nice and they had come to expect it in such a system and they would generally like to use it. Overall, participants expressed that their user experience could be improved by a more rich metadata, both in form and context. They would like to have the option to preview the contents of the publication. They expressed the personalization aspects, and also they would like to see different recommendation lists. For example, more content-based filtering list instead of the collaborative-based filtering, which is existing now, and it's called Others Also Bought. Additionally, participants wished to see an integration with other systems, for example, Goodreads or Dobre knjige, which is a Slovenian book recommendation system, and such integration of ratings and reviews would aid participants to make a quicker selection instead of having to resort to external systems. Using the two methods, we aim to gain a deeper understanding of the user experience and the navigation process when selecting novels. However, our findings are of course limited by the design constraints of the bookstore we used in our study. And the participants made their choices based on the available metadata and have adjusted their search actions accordingly to the functionalities and the limitations of the bookstore.
You have 10 minutes.
In our study, the queries played an important role. This is because browsing options were not very well supported due to inadequate metadata and the genre taxonomy. If the online bookstore would have offered a richer metadata, the search actions would likely be different. Analyzing the exploratory search can be quite challenging due to diverse starting paths and different pages participants open during their session. Therefore, it is quite hard to compare the sessions. However, comparing the eye tracking with the user comments, we gained a better understanding, and comments were essential for accurately interpreting the observations of the eye tracking. We can generally say the user experience was not particularly positive in this online bookstore and did not really support the participants in finding a good novel. This is, of course, due to the insufficient metadata resulting in usability issues that had the most impact on the user experience, creating a sense of mistrust and confusion. Our study reaffirmed that high quality and rich metadata with good genre taxonomy that supports browsing is crucial to meet users' expectations, supporting them in navigation and novel selection, and ensuring their continuous engagement with this system in the future.